Hello, and welcome to today's episode of Decrypting IT. I'm your host, Ashley Wallace, Client Success Lead here at Katalyst Network Group. Today, we're kicking off a special mini-series diving into the real-world findings from Katalyst 2025 Cybersecurity Annual Report. It's not just another white paper, it's a spotlight on what's really happening across the Southeast and across multiple verticals: financial firms, healthcare systems, manufacturers, and municipal governments. We're pulling back the curtain on misconfigurations, blind spots, and vulnerabilities that attackers are actively exploiting and showing you exactly what to do about them. Over the next several episodes, we're going to cover the biggest security gaps that we've uncovered, from unpatched firewalls, missing MFA, to shadow IT and overlooked phishing threats. And then we're going to break it all down with the help of our industry experts, partners, and frontline engineers. If you've ever asked yourself, are we doing enough? Trust me, you're not alone. This series is here to give you answers, action, and clarity, because cybersecurity isn't just an IT issue anymore, it's a business survival issue. So let's start where it all began, with the vision behind this report, and there's no one better to help us set the tone than our own CEO and guest for episode 1, Luke Johnson. So thanks for joining us, Luke. We're super excited and grateful that you're able to spend time with me today and talk through this.
I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me, Ashley.
Of course. So let's just get started and dive right in. So I am curious to know, why now? Why 2025? What made this the right time to launch the report? What was the vision behind creating the report? Kind of a two-part question there.
Yeah, I think that we realized we have a lot of data that we have gathered from many engagements we do, and that we could share that with a wider group of people and help them as well. I'm an entrepreneur, and many of these firms are as well. They started there, and I'm passionate about helping these smaller and more mid-sized organizations. They're doing a lot of good in their communities. They're great employers of a lot of people, and I think that in many cases, they are left behind a bit when it comes to cybersecurity, and we can help them more. As I mentioned, we've got so much data that we realized we could put together and really share. How do people benchmark against that data? So we really focused in on the last year's worth of what we gathered, and we put together a summary and tried to put real actionable insights together in that summary. And the last thing I'll share is, I think there's a lot of reports that are really frightening, and we were trying not to make ours frightening and more very informative with insights on what you could do.
Yeah, I love that. I love that it brings in, and just like I mentioned before, it just doesn't leave people hanging. It's like we're here to expose the truth and the reality of the situation that we've seen in the real data, and then bring that back to giving people some actionable tips, like you mentioned. So that's great. When you did review that data in the annual cyber report, what stood out to you the most? What was the most surprising to you?
I think there's a handful of things. In some ways, the percentages sound frightening, but when I think about 94% of organizations that we see lack multi-factor authentication appropriately deployed across all systems, and privileged account management is not quite where it needs to be. And so, that means that there's inconsistent ways of authenticating into systems, and there's potentially accounts that have this admin access that it's not being managed correctly. I also think about 80% of organizations had misconfigurations in their endpoint protection,
Mm-hmm.
or none at all. And that's a big gap. Two more points that I really honed in on in the report were 63% had no monitoring of security events, and then no incident response plan at all. And then the last piece is 50% failed to test their backups or secure their backups. And when you may need those most is in the event of a ransomware event happening. So those were some highlights on some of the pieces in there that I thought were really interesting.
And all solutions that we can help with at Katalyst.
Absolutely. I think the thing I would stress is that you probably aren't going to fix all of these things overnight, but the important thing is to start making steps towards fixing them and not let them get worse.
Creating that roadmap and prioritizing what first, what's the most impactful, so on and so forth.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Yeah, great advice. Great advice. And so, one of the things we talk about at Catalyst all the time, it's part of our motto here, is going further, faster, and safer. So, what does that mean when it comes to cybersecurity? How are we enabling those smarter decisions and safer operations? I think we just talked about one way,
Yeah.
right? Like helping to plan and prioritize, helping our organizations that way. But what else would you say?
It's funny when we created that little saying of further, faster, safer. The further part was we hope that when you work with us, we enable you to go further than without working with us. We hope that when you work with us, we enable you to go faster than if we weren't in the equation. The safer part was all about cyber. So everything we do, whether it's helping you go further or faster, we're trying to layer in how do we keep it secure. I think that it's different for everyone. What we really do is dive in deep with our clients to understand the organization better. Of all the organizations we work with, I don't think we've ever seen two that are identical. And we need to understand the unique pains that that organization has. And then we will come up with the painkiller or solution to that pain. Some want us all the way in and to do it all, and some want us to join them in a very fragmented or fractional way. And I think that that's some of the stuff that we help deliver. Sometimes there's solutions out of the box that can solve a problem for you, and sometimes there's a whole process change and a lot of things that need to occur. So where I think a lot of organizations get it wrong is they just come with their solution and say, this is what you need. And we end up seeing a lot of organizations that we come into with a lot of shelfware that they've purchased tools, but they have no means to deploy those tools or actually use those tools to help them. And so we start with really understanding what the pain you have is, and then we come with the painkiller and help you solve for that.
Helping to fill those gaps.
That's right.
Perfect. So, as we roll out the rest of the mini series, because we're gonna have several different just small clips for people to easily access. There's just so much data to cover in this report, but we want to make sure we don't miss anything. So what are you most excited for listeners to learn about in these mini series?
I understand how many people are, and every one of us is extremely busy. And when I read this report, I think it's great and it's super insightful, but it is massive. There is so
Yeah.
much here and it's hard to consume. And I think, okay, if I'm sitting down and trying to read this report and highlight the takeaways, there's a lot here. I think the thing I'm most excited about with the mini series is we're breaking the report down into bite-sized chunks. And I think it is going to make it more consumable and more accessible for many people. It's a little bit of cybersecurity is an easy thing to sort of say, yes, I'll get to that tomorrow because I know this is this massive problem and I don't even know where to start. And I
Yeah.
think that putting it into this mini series is a good way to kind of say, let's just break it down into these bite-sized chunks and take it from there. And I think that'll be helpful for folks.
I love that. It makes it more manageable and easier to take action. I think sometimes when you're presented with all this data, or you have several of those different aspects that may be missing from your organization. Maybe you haven't implemented MFA, or you have misconfigured endpoints, or any of these various different things. Maybe you've got several of those, and it can be overwhelming. So I think taking the mini series and us being able to break that out gives people insight on where they can maybe help to start and prioritize. And then again, lastly, not to forget that we are able to step in and help there.
Yeah.
So great. Anything else that you can think of before we close out? We are just going to make this a really short one today and
Yeah.
just kind of prep people for what's coming down the line. But anything else, Luke?
I think
You can
there's a few things I'd share. We have a webinar coming up that is a great thing to join, and I think that that'll start that mini series and give you some more insights into what you're looking at. And if you can't make that, or you're just not interested, I would encourage you to take the report and schedule some time with someone to talk about it. Some firm that does do some specialization in cybersecurity. Start taking action today. I think it's the most important thing to do is just to take some forward steps and get moving. We hope that you'll engage us to do that. We would love to help you. We have a few different offerings where we can come in and help you with discovery. We have something called a technology business canvas where we really come in and look at all of your technology and help you understand current state. We also have a really deep dive offering where we get into your cybersecurity, and it's called a security analysis and roadmap. And we'd love to talk to you about just different options of how you can get started.
Great, awesome. If you have or haven't checked out our 2025 Cybersecurity Annual Report, we've got a live virtual event. We don't want you to miss it. It's coming up on July 9th at 10 a.m. Our very own Uriah Berry, Katalyst engineer, consulting engineer here at Katalyst, and former NSA, is going to walk you through the real world findings from that report and break down what's actually going on in those IT environments today. So this isn't vendor hype. It's the practical hands-on insights you can actually use, and you'll have the chance to ask questions, which is awesome. We're definitely excited about that part. Hopefully you are as well. We've dropped that registration link as well as the link to the report in the description of the video, and you can grab the full report here too if you haven't seen it yet. Again, thanks for joining today. We appreciate you, Luke. Thank you for coming on and providing your
Thanks,
insights
Ashley.
and
That's
vision
fun.
behind the report.
Yeah, appreciate you having me.
Of course. Have a great day. Bye, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.